On the subject of outstanding women in international security, I'm delighted to bring us back full circle to where we started and to introduce my colleague Evelyn Goh, the Shedden Professor of Strategic Policy Studies here at the ANU. Would Evelyn like to come to the stage? And again, Evelyn's accomplishments are so many, and our time is so limited that I have written a script, so forgive me for reading this. Evelyn is one of two scholars, who both happen to be women, who have shaped my thinking about international security more than any other. I first seriously encountered Evelyn's work when I was a doctoral student, sitting in Oxford's Rothermere American Institute Library, reading Evelyn's PhD thesis and what would become her first book, I can see it through here in fact, published with Cambridge University Press, on how the United States reconstructed its policy towards China in the 1960s and 70s, away from the idea that China was a communist menace and towards the idea of it being a tacit ally. Yes, we knew at that point that Nixon had fundamentally changed the US-China relationship in the early 1970s. But Evelyn's work showed us that the monumental change like this one didn't just happen overnight in response to a billiard ball-like shift in the balance of power. Instead, she showed us how individual policymakers gradually redefined their ideas about China over many years, how they considered and debated a range of different policies towards China. As a doctoral student, I was trying to understand how Evelyn did it, how she weaved together a rich empirical story based on close analysis of US presidential archives with an innovative theoretical approach that foregrounded the role of discourse and narratives, and which therefore allowed her to draw out the motivations and understandings of policymakers negotiating this dramatic shift in US policy towards China. I think at the time I probably took it for granted the ease with which Evelyn combined this empirical integrity and theoretical innovation. But I've since realised that this is an extremely rare combination, and also one that Evelyn has amazingly managed to bring to bear in every single one of her books and articles. From the US-China relationship, Evelyn then turned her sights to the wider East Asian region, and in particular to Southeast Asia. In a series of articles everywhere from International Security, the leading journal in our field, through to more policy-focused outlets, Evelyn pioneered work on the strategies that Southeast Asian states have adopted towards the great powers. These articles overturn the idea that Southeast Asian states were non-strategic or merely passive recipients of the policies and behaviours of the great powers. Instead, Evelyn became the first scholar to explain the concept of hedging by Southeast Asian states and the impact of these hedging policies on the wider regional security system. And we are still living with Evelyn's explanation and the insights gained from Evelyn's explanation today. These works defined Evelyn's place as the world's leading scholar on Southeast Asian strategies, with her publications placed on reading lists around the world and her research taken up by policy audiences in the region, the US and China, and very much bringing her to the attention of scholars and policymakers here in Australia. So in 2013, we were fortunate enough to lure Evelyn away from the United Kingdom, where she'd been based previously at Oxford and Royal Holloway University of London, to join SDSC. That year, Evelyn also published The Struggle for Order with Oxford University Press, a book that marked her out as a rare East Asian regional specialist, not someone who just focused on one particular country or set of countries, but someone who focused on the US, China, Northeast Asia and Southeast Asia. The Struggle for Order is the book on my bookshelf that I have returned to more than any other. It's not always an easy read, but to my mind there is no better explanation of the US-led order in Asia. Evelyn shows us how East Asian states have helped legitimise and construct a US-led order since the end of the Cold War, how they've sought to incorporate China within that order, and the unusual role played by Japan. When I have questions about the North Korean nuclear crisis and the South China Sea dispute, when I have questions about why East Asia's economic and security institutions look the way they do, or what the impact of Northeast Asia's unresolved history wars might be, it's Evelyn's book that I turn to. It's a book that has, for me, rewarded reading and rereading. I focused in particular tonight on Evelyn's scholarship rather than her many, many other accomplishments because I think it's at the heart of everything that she does. For those of you who've had the fortune to be taught by, supervised by, or to work alongside Evelyn, you will know that academic quality is the foundation for how she navigates the world. She will devote extraordinary amounts of time to supporting junior scholars, peers, and research students who share her passion for serious academic research. And one of the ways that she's done this in particular here at SDSC is through the founding of GradNAS, the Graduate Research and Development Network on Asian Security. And it brings together, along with Evelyn, the world's leading scholars on Asian security to promote the study of this particular field and to train up the next generation of scholars who are studying what is the world's most, I think, important region, arguably, but a field that's still, a region that is still marginalised in the wider field of international security, or which can be talked about by so-called experts who haven't devoted the time to really understanding the countries of the region. Evelyn has been an important mentor to me over my career and my studies to date, and I want to thank her for initiating this Women in International Security series and for the events tonight. Thank you.
It was surprisingly hard to come up with a pithy 2-minute reflection on the upsides, the downsides, and the challenges of being a woman scholar in international security. I think we each had this difficulty in different ways. And I'd like to remind you that my colleagues, of course, are sharing particular experiences that we've each had. They're all different, and we've all come into the field at different points, often from different countries. And we hope that this would be useful to you in illustrating the range of experiences that women have had, and also the range of things that we could bring to the field and to the academic experience in general. So for what it's worth, my 3 brief points are the following on being a woman scholar in international security. My first point has to do with quality as well as quantity. I went from an overachieving set of all-girls schools to Oxbridge environments that were conspicuously lacking in women. But my Oxford years particularly were graced by a series of memorable women, teachers, mentors, friends, colleagues, who were very small in number. We lacked quantity, but constant, and each full of impact individually for my career. They opened so many doors before me, and their grace was such that I personally never had to think about my gender in entering this field of international relations and international security. For example, at Jesus College in Oxford, my undergraduate mentor was Patricia Daly, who is black, female, a single mother then, a specialist in African politics from the Caribbean. Now in 1993, this was highly unusual for an Oxford Don. I heard last week that Jesus College in the other place, Cambridge, appointed the first black woman Oxbridge head of house. This is Sunita Allen. I was very proud of them. My second point, which this segues into, is that I think the struggles of academic women are not only our own, but they are intertwined with the struggles of others who have been considered traditionally other, or worse, subaltern. Right? We're thinking of people of color, we're thinking of the post-colonial, LGBT communities, those with family, even the multiple challenges of being a scholar and trying to get your work out there and your voice heard based on your research. One of the reasons I may sometimes appear inured to the gender agenda is because as a social scientist, I can't often isolate the independent variable. Might I be treated a certain way because I was female, non-white, or, as I used to be, simply young-looking? I couldn't tell. Finally, I'd like to make an observation on the imperatives in general of the international security field. The problems of our age are so vast that we need unprecedented breadth and depth to our collective knowledge. Basically, we need to know a lot more in greater depth collectively than we did before. We also need to be able to work with gray zone things in a huge variety of fields. We need to be able to deal with duality, hybridity, and contingency in international affairs. This is in contrast to those easy dichotomies or linear assumptions that basic approaches offer us. These challenging conditions are so challenging to our existing mindsets and standard operational procedures that we need all the best hands on deck that we can get in the international security sphere. We need a diversity of backgrounds, talents, and creativities to draw from, be they male, female, or any other sort of diversification.